We're building up godly men for a better tomorrow. This is On the Edge with Ken Harrison, where we inspire men of integrity to put faith into action together. Just before we get into today's episode, we'd like to invite you to subscribe to our weekly devotional group. Just text the 2 words, Promise Keepers, to 31996. Every week you'll receive a challenging devotional that will inspire you to put your faith into action in the real world. Again, text Promise Keepers to 31996. And now, here's today's show.
So we're talking to Jeff Bramstedt, Navy SEAL extraordinaire, and someone who did one of the most sacrificial, brave acts of love that I've ever heard of. This is going to be a great show. Hey, Jeff.
Mr. Ken?
Navy SEAL extraordinaire.
Yeah, once upon a time.
So I want to be a Navy SEAL.
Okay.
So how do I become one? What do I do?
You're going to have to probably have been born after 1990. Just say it.
Tell me I look old.
Hey, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying probably, if I look at your driver's license, you'll probably be pre-1990.
Okay, so let's just say that my nephew, who's standing over here behind the camera, holding one of the cameras, let's say he wants to become a Navy SEAL. What does he do?
Far too pretty. Yeah, I mean, you gotta have that ruggedly handsome look, not looking like you just left a boy band.
Yeah, and let's I want to acknowledge right now, Gage has huge guns. He was a high school wrestler. So,
but no one's off limits. I mean, you got to pick on everybody. There's a whole litany of criteria for that. Starting with, you have the desire to do it. Do you want to? What do you want to do? Do you?
All right, so let's do
basic
this.
Athlete,
give me the
stuff
process,
like
and then tell me what kind of man it takes to succeed.
Got it. So the basics of the process, and this is going to be a hybrid of I know what I had to deal with, and then my limited working knowledge of kind of what it takes now. But you have to be a basic athlete. Just have the basic motor skills to be able to get in the front door of BUD/S, which isn't super crazy, but there's an outline for the performance. You have a physical test that you have to take to be able to get in, and you have to be able to swim 500 meters.
Okay, so you joined the Navy first.
No, this is before. They want to make sure. Yeah, before the Navy.
So when you sign up, you can actually sign up to be a SEAL before you
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Correct.
So it's not like Special Forces in the Army.
No, where you have to go do something else first, and then, or at least a little bit of something, and then after you've kind of proven your point, then you can kind of go into the SF. I think that's how they do it. No, here is they'll take guys straight off the street.
Wow.
But you have to, of course, get to boot camp first, and to get to boot camp means that first you have to be able to get a contract. To be able to first get a contract means that first you have to fulfill a certain level of criteria. Okay. And that stuff is score so high in your ASVAB, be able to swim 500 meters so fast, and do this many push-ups, this many sit-ups, this many pull-ups, be able to run this fast.
Do you remember like what
the numbers? I don't know the numbers. I know roughly it's maybe sub 8 minutes for 500 meters. It's roughly I don't know. I'm going to say probably 70, 80 pull-ups. I know the guy, or 70, 80 push-ups and sit-ups in 2 minutes. Whenever I mentor anybody, I always tell them, hey, be able to do a push-up a second for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Be able to do a sit-up a second for 2 minutes. That way you're insured.
So 120
be able to crush all comers
in 2 minutes. You're okay.
Mm-hmm. Crush all comers. That's what I say. Anybody who's got, because it's a now that everybody knows about it because the media is so out loud and upfront about everything that
yeah. And I want to talk to you later about how you feel about all these SEALs writing books and stuff. I know you
common question. But once you get past the physical side of it, and I probably running concurrently with that, you have to, your transcripts from schooling. Do you have a degree or not? Do you need one? You don't have to have one. Right now, like 60-70% of the guys coming in have degrees.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The enlisted guys. So it's a sharp bunch. They're smarter, bigger, faster, stronger than when I went through. That's for sure. So then there's does somebody need a waiver? We have had some kind of police interaction.
Oh,
Do they want to make sure that they're financially somewhat squared away? And usually the young guys have never even seen a credit card application, so they're usually not in that much trouble.
So if they've run up some bad debt, that could be a
little bit of a problem. Yeah, I mean, now you're dealing with security clearances and things like that when you have some kind of strangeness in your background as far as questionable ability to be able to handle finances. Well, then they don't really want you having some kind of security clearance where you have access to national secrets and national security issues. So once you get past all that one, medically, it's like a surgery in the past. You can't have a surgery in the past 3 years or broken a bone or something like that.
Well, that rules you out, which we're going to get into later.
Right. I've had a surgery. I've never broken a bone though. I've never had really broke. Well, I take that back. I broke a hand on someone's. They were back in the days.
Dude, I would rather break a bone than go through what you went through voluntarily. And that, just to teach it for later. It's one of the most admirable and amazingly Christian things I've ever heard anybody do. What you did to save somebody's life.
Yeah, it was
incredible.
That was interesting. But
okay, so we're in Buds now. We made it to Buds. Mm-hmm. We're not in debt. Mm-hmm. We can do 120 push-ups in 2 minutes and the same amount of sit-ups. Mm-hmm. And we can swim 500
I'm not saying
meters.
that's a number.
Yeah, I know, right.
Don't quote me on those numbers.
But you're able to do that.
Go see a recruiter, and if you can do those numbers, you'll crush everybody because it's literally a national competition.
Yeah, there's only 2,500 SEALs, right?
In that, yeah, 2,500, 3,500.
This is the elite of the elite. I mean, you're not just waltzing in.
Right. They don't hand. It's not. They're not giving it away, but it's at the same time. It's there. If you want it bad enough, it's yours. All you have to do is just not stop. Keep on going.
Boy, man.
Like who was it? Winston Churchill once said, "If you're going through hell, don't stop."
Yeah, I mean, when I went through Marine Corps OCS, and their entire goal there was to make you quit. You just had to survive, and it was not a pleasant experience.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in Buds now. They're not trying to make you quit, but they are making you miserable because we learn through pain.
By some degree, they're trying to make you. I think it's probably always maybe interpreted as trying to make you quit. They want to see if you got it. And those instructors have a job to do, and that is to make sure that the best candidate gets into the positions that are needed in the SEAL teams, and they do a great job of that.
So now all the training is down here in San Diego.
All the basic side is done here in town.
Where we are right now, we're at your skydiving place.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very cool place. And can I say that there's a bunch of Bud guys training outside?
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys out there that are going into the SEAL teams. They're out there training for military free fall right now.
That's very cool, man. Yeah. Okay, so they're out there training. We're in here talking about what it takes to be one of them. Mm-hmm. They would go about 20 miles west of here, to Coronado, into the freezing cold San Diego water. Mm-hmm. I was a surfer, so I was such a wuss. You're living here in San Diego when I lived here. After October, I wouldn't surf anymore. It was just too cold.
Right.
Come back into May. So
I have an allergy actually to cold water, and I get these bumps all over my arm. I shiver a little bit. I get really grumpy. I think it's an allergic reaction to cold water. I get angry.
Really?
I get angry eyebrows. Yeah, I get when I get on cold water, I start doing this a lot.
So you had 6 months of misery in Buds then in cold water.
Correct. And I grew up in Wisconsin. You'd think that cold would just kind of come with me on this, but it didn't. And I try to explain to my friends back home. I'm like, it is cold. They're like,
cold and wet's different than cold and dry.
It is. And you try to explain, they're like, you know what though, poor baby.
Yeah, right.
You got trained in Coronado. I'm like, you don't understand. It is the coldest place on the planet. I don't know why Santa doesn't set up shop here.
And then they have you roll around the sand just for fun.
It gets you wet, roll around the sand, and you go on. That's does awesome for the chafing. It's just
So when is Hell Week? Is that 6 weeks in?
I mean, you got to go through a little bit of an orientation phase when you first get there, and they teach you the basics. This is what's going to be expected of you here. This is how you run in the sand. This is how we're going to teach you how to, the swimming part. And they get a lot of that too in boot camp. They have this second part of boot camp for the guys that are coming here.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a orientation. It's a pre-buds type thing where they're literally trained like athletes to be able to come down and withstand the rigors of buds. Okay. And that is just to try to do everything they can to try to increase the likelihood of somebody making it through. They want guys to make it through.
Yeah, sure.
And so try to get them as every opportunity to be able to do that. And the when they do get here, when you do start day 1, week 1 of first phase, 3-4 weeks in is probably where you're going to experience Hell Week.
That soon?
Mm-hmm. They do it right away.
Wow.
I mean, invest a bunch of money into a guy that's not going to make it through, and the classes are so big and they want to get them down to working size classes so they can start teaching them
So what
tricks.
makes it Hell Week? What is so bad about it?
It's basically 5.5 days of constant physical activity with little to no sleep.
And being cold.
And it varies. The intensity of certain aspects of Hell Week vary based on the time of year. You go through during the summer, you're going to spend a little more time in the water. You go through in the winter, you're going to spend a little bit more time running and dealing with logs and boats on your heads and things like that.
And put it in perspective, I mean, in the summer here in San Diego, the water can be 70, 72. In the winter, it can be like 55, 56 degrees. It is crazy cold.
Yep. And this year, it's unseasonably cold in the water.
Really?
The water. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All the guys that I mentor, they get up every morning. It's jiu-jitsu with me. Starting about 6 a.m. By about 8:30, 9 a.m., they're in the water for about a half a mile to a mile swim with a buddy of mine who's got a boat down at the marina. They get in the water and they are not liking that, but they do it every day, and wetsuits not allowed. No wetsuits allowed.
Oh, I've been rules, man.
My 2 boys have started doing it too. My 2 teenagers. Yeah, they're starting to get an appreciation, shall we say, for appreciating warmer water.
So somebody makes it to buds. What's your advice to them? What would you warn them about, and what would you encourage them in? Like, there's a kid out there, or there's a dad listening. His son says, "I got to be a Navy SEAL."
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you say to that guy?
Getting through buds has a lot to do with. There's several things, and some of them are completely out of your control. And that is, sometimes some guys' bodies just break. Mm-hmm. They can't run. And as far as you might in your head, and you're physically, you're like, I can do it in my head. I can do this. But then you end up with things that just show up.
It's kind of like being 53.
Or 50. I just turned 50.
Yeah.
But sometimes stress fractures, shin splints that lead to stress fractures, and these or recurring chronic injuries that just don't go away. A lot of guys end up with labrum tears, shoulders, hips. Things
now, if
like
that happens to you, you're halfway through. Mm-hmm. Do you get to come back at that point?
Mm-hmm. They'll roll you, and they'll.
So you don't have to start at the beginning. You start.
Yeah, you start where you left off,
okay.
Or at least the beginning of the phase where you got hurt. There's 3 major phases: first, second, and third, and they'll just roll you. So you'll just stop training, rehab, get better, and then start again. Well, if that problem keeps on happening, well, they don't have any choice really. They're like, your body's not gonna do well. Let's get you on out, so you can be successful somewhere else. But it's being a. I would always say to somebody who wants to be a SEAL to understand the fact that your body is 10 times more capable than your brain tells it that it is.
I learned that in OCS.
Right? And it hurts. You put on the get your wah going. Well, when that happens, now you're starting to almost capitulate to what your brain is just getting messages. Your muscles and your body saying, "Yeah, I'm tired. I need rest," and everything else. But it can still keep going. Mm-hmm. It can still. It's just getting up to the edge of who you have always known you to be physically and your capabilities. And then somebody stands behind you and, use an old Army term, gives you the old school Kiwi assist. Remember Kiwi, the shoe shining stuff, right? the brand Kiwi, give you the Kiwi assist.
Right.
It means
kicks you in the butt.
Yeah, boom, and they get launched right off the ledge that they've always known to be their limitation. And then they realize, I didn't fail. Definitely didn't die. I didn't fall down. I'm still on my feet, and my limits are 6 feet back there. I have a whole new set of limits now. That's what Hell Week does. Mm-hmm. And that's what Buds does. It keeps kicking you down the road until you have gone so far past what your personal observation has been for so many years of what your limitations are. Now you have a whole new set of limitations that you never knew you had. And that's what it's about. So whether somebody gets through Buds or not is one thing. Of course, that's the goal. But even if they don't, they've been tested and they come through the other side. They say, now I know that I can do something more than what I thought that I could have ever done ever. And they get out and do amazing things. Some of the guys that get out of the SEAL teams go on to do such fantastic things. Guys who didn't make it through, but got through a certain point of their training, leave, and they always deal with depression. They deal with these parts of them that are just like, I should have, I didn't, but I don't know what would happen. It's like, and then after a while, they start figuring out, like, I'm really good at something. It just, I wasn't supposed to be there for whatever reason. So there are guys that end up leaving buds that still would have made great team guys, would have been amazing SEALs, but because of the system in place and how it's set up, they just didn't make through. And there's no system that's perfect. How do you set up a perfect system like that when you're trying to find these types of guys? So I would always just say, man, just understand that you are going to get pushed past your limit. Understand that your limits are just temporary. And when you get there, everything in excellence. Everything that you say, the way that you treat your teammates and the guys in your boat crew, everything in excellence. Don't let anything come out of your mouth that's discouraging. Always be there for somebody. Take care of community gear before you take care of your own gear. Take care of somebody else before you take care of somebody else before you take care of yourself. Head on a swivel. Where's a need that I can meet? Because then at the end of the day, people are going to say, like, that dude is amazing at because he always looks out for everybody else. That's going to be also something that is, they always say it's an individual sport, but it's also a team sport. It has both components. And if you can do both well, then you're going to do well no matter what you do going forward in life. It doesn't matter. So it's kind of, what are you willing to take away from this as you go through the process?
The amount of scriptural and biblical application points to what you just said, right? I mean, a walk of faith in God is the same thing. It's why he puts us through suffering so often, is because when we have faith, we have to count on him where we're desperate. There's no way out of this. And then he comes through, it builds and it builds and it builds. And that's how you become a George Mueller, who can just walk in utter and complete faith to the Lord, stretching. Like everything you just said applies to a Christian man or woman. You're not going to talk about the war. You're not going to tell any war stories. But when you got to the war, did you feel like you were fully prepared? Were there things you learned when you got there that you thought, oh man, that wasn't in my training? Or how well prepared were you?
I wasn't too stressed out about it. When the stuff that I encountered in the SEAL teams was pretty mundane relative to the guys that are out there and getting amongst it. Well, fairly recently. I think now things have calmed down a little bit, and before we get going again on any whatever new theater that's there. But when I did encounter, it was after I was in the military, when I was a contractor and I got out, and that was when I just looked around and I was like, I am not surrounded by the guys that I went through training with.
Oh, really?
I got, some guys are cops, some guys are firefighters, some guys are Army guys, some guys are Marine Corps guys. Nothing against all those guys. They have their own language that they speak. Right. And I'm the guy that's sitting there going, I know the answer. I got the solution. Let's do this. Let's do that. And they're all saying, well, you're not in charge. I'm like, correct. However, I would like to go home at the end of this. And so I kind of took it upon myself to just kind of show the guys. We were doing a lot of security detail stuff. So teaching guys what they needed to do to be able to get through this, driving and being able to work with the guy that we're there to take care of. It was a big lesson for me in leadership. And we were mostly with Army infantry guys. So I got put with Army infantry guys. I got handed a whole bunch of Army guys, and they said, okay, we're here to learn whatever it is you got. And I'm just kind of looking them up and down. I'm like, cool. Do you have any magazines for those firearms? It's like, oh no, they don't give us magazines. I'm like, they give you a gun, but they don't give you a magazine. That baffled me. So that was a whole new, argument and argument. Well, conflict. It was a situation. Yeah, a situation. It was a situation that we had to solve, but we did. But end of the day, everything worked out. We had a few hair-raising moments. But I think that I always say that there are two kinds of leaders that are out there: the kind that are born and the kind that are created, mentored. You take someone who's a born leader and they're not mentored, they're kind of like the bossy guy. They're bossy. You take someone who is they've learned from being a great follower how to be a great leader. That guy's going to be really good. Now you take a born leader and he is teachable and mentored and he knows how to follow. He's going to be an amazing leader, right? And so I was always trying to figure out which of those that I fit into, because I don't think I was the born leader. I just don't think I was, just based on how I grew up and what I was around in my environment and everything else. I just never really got a good gauge of that. Was I a mentored leader? Sure, I was a mentored leader, but how good of a leader was I? If you were to ask the people that have ever followed somebody, if somebody is a good leader, you're going to get a much different answer than from somebody who has their own view of themselves. When you look at that distorted mirror of leadership, you're just like, yeah, I'm awesome at this, and this. But how many times are you going to really focus on your weaknesses? Well, what I did is I just really started focusing on my weaknesses. I know what my strengths are. And after a long time of focusing on my weaknesses, I started thinking, what if I surround myself with the people whose strengths are my weaknesses, and I keep those guys right here?
Takes a secure man to do that.
It changes the game. It's a game changer. So that's what I've been last probably, I'd say close to a decade. That's what I've been focusing on, is making sure that I am surrounded by people whose strengths are my weaknesses and people who are not going to just say yes to everything. And the people that are going to call me on my stuff and just say that doesn't
Hey,
fly.
every pastor out there listening to this, rewind it and listen to that again. Because the biggest problem we have with pastors in America today is that they will not surround themselves with people who will hold them accountable and call them on their junk.
Right. Yeah, it takes a degree of security and humility to be able to do that. Probably the biggest job that I've ever had in my life, and I've had a lot of them. From my first job, which I always win the first job contest, whenever you're sitting around a whole bunch of team guys and everybody's like, oh, I was a stripper. I'm like, wow, didn't see that coming. You get the one guy that's like, I worked at McDonald's. I'm like, oh, there was somebody, okay, no more stories out of you. I don't need, but all the way to where I'm at now, right? My first job, all the way to where I'm at.
What was your first job? Now you got to tell us what that was.
Oh, I worked for, I had two. I was a corn detasseler.
A what?
Corn detasseler.
Corn detasseler.
Yeah, they send a whole bunch of kids out to a field. They make you walk down a 2-mile field pulling the tops of the corn off, so that you so it's corn because it's the way when you pull the tops off and you put it on the ground. Now it can't pollinate with other corn that's around it, and you end up with rogue corn. And so it keeps the corn. It keeps the corn healthy as corn's
So you're
growing.
castrating the
Castrating corn. Yep.
All right.
Spay and neuter at the same time because corn has both in one. Anyway, wow.
Okay, so you
digressed.
castrated corn, and then what else?
And I worked for a guy who was an artificial inseminator of cows.
Okay, so you're making sure one thing can't get pregnant, and then you're making sure the other thing does get pregnant.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was like a job where, you got a glove that goes up to your shoulder, step ladder. So want me to keep going? I can do this all day.
I got the
I can
visual.
do it. Okay. All right. Cool. Works great until the cow gets mad and kicks a step ladder and you're less than 5 feet tall. Yeah, it was terrible.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, it was terrible. As I go through the list of like where I've been in my life and through the whole scope of careers, and not careers, but just jobs, I always looked at the people who were around me. I looked at them much differently as soon as I became a leader. The hardest job that I ever had was being a husband and a dad. And people say, oh, it must be so tough. Being a SEAL must be so tough. Going through training must be so tough. Cold water must be. I'm like, Buds was the best time of my life. My responsibility load was so low. I'd put one foot in front of the other and do it again. And then again, and again, right? And again. Yeah. Do as I'm told. Don't do anything more. Don't do anything less. Do the best that I can. Run fast, swim fast, do more push-ups than you could possibly ever imagine, and go eat a bunch of food. Oh. Okay. Oh, all while living on the beach. when you're 20 years
There's
old.
people paying $500 a night at the Hotel Del Coronado just to be where you guys are.
I know. And it's like, that was the best time of my life. The hardest job I ever had was being married. That's why I don't understand the guys going through buds and they're getting married at the same time. It's like, I have an idea. Let me push this big, huge rock up a hill. Oh, you know what? I'm going to push this big rock and this big rock up a hill at the same time. You're going to get crushed by a rock.
Yeah.
Any way you cut it. And guys that do it, and they do it successfully. I mean, I just look at it through my goggles, my life's goggles. I'm like, I don't think I would have done that so well. But when I have a kid now, I have these young boys and they're, wanting to follow in dad's footsteps, do dad stuff. It's a game changer. I learned more about leadership, raising my kids. I have 4 kids.
How old are they now?
19, 17, 16, 10.
So 2 of them are already skydiving.
2 of them are already skydiving. Yep.
That's nice.
Yep. And the 15-year-old, she's not going to. She'll have nothing to do with it. And then my 10-year-old, he's going to be following up behind his older brothers, and I'm sure he wants to get after it too. So, but
are any of them going to become Navy SEALs?
The first 2 boys, of course, my daughter is special needs, and now that they're doing women and buds type thing, that would be open to her, but she's special needs. The two boys are, and her, the first 3 are all diabetics. So until technology gets there for that to change, then they won't be able to go into the military. But the 10-year-old is he's our new guy, so we've had him for 3 years. He's not diabetic. He's it's open to him if he wants to do it, but he wants to be a praise and worship leader.
All right.
So he's our musician, singer, creative kind of guy. It's fun watching the difference between all of them.
Now, you said a minute ago, women are open to buds type things. What does that mean?
They can go into their buds is now opening up for females,
but none of them have made it yet, have they?
I don't think so. I think it's fairly new.
Do you think they can? Do you think there's a female that can? I don't think any woman's made it through Marine Corps OCS yet.
I don't. I mean, it's like I'm not really against them trying. I'm just wondering if they're giving up something that they would want to have later to get through buds. I'm not sure that if they did true buds, I mean, the way it was really designed, I mean, 10, 15 years ago buds. I don't know if the standards have changed. I don't know what that's like right now.
Are you worried about that? I mean, that was my concern. I saw that on the LAPD when women got on the LAPD.
Well, let me do this because I don't want to leave anybody hanging, because people are going to be like, I'm coming for you. If you don't like what I'm saying, my name is Ken at promisekeepers.com. Send me all your comments. Love to hear from you.
Believe me, I'm already getting, I offend people so much that. On both sides of the aisle, man.
You, me both.
I get letters, especially during the Trump presidency. I would get letters, you are a pro-Trump, terrible pro-Trump.
You're a racist.
And then I would get, you hate Trump, you're a liberal. And I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, you're awesome, bro.
I just want to be pro-Jesus. So, are you worried? I mean, so on the LAPD, we saw that it was, well, women can come on, but they have to meet the same standards. And then when they couldn't meet the standards, they kept lowering them. It was like SWAT. We had Metro, which is like our special forces. And they kept lowering them until they got them to a point where they could have a few women on there. And so when they let women into combat, I'm like, oh, here we go. Because they're going to say, well, if they should have a chance to make it if they can make the standards. And then like in the Marines, they had 28 women, the best women in the Marine Corps try out for OCS, and none of them made it past day 4. So then they started screaming that the 250-year-old standards of the Marine Corps were sexist, and they started lowering them. And so are you worried about the standards of the military and our readiness to fight in a war if we're getting woke and worrying about the makeup of the military rather than just getting the best fighters that we can have regardless?
Yeah, I don't know what the standards are doing. I have not looked into that lately. I knew one woman who, she actually came to me and asked me to mentor her into the SEAL community. And at the time, I had never even thought of it. It never even occurred to me. So I didn't have a chance to really form my opinion on it yet. And so I was really frank with her. I said, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that yet. And she said, I'm not either. I'm not sure. It's like, I'm a 33-year-old captain in the Marine Corps. I was like, got it. You look fit. You look like you're, kind of squared away. You don't get to captain the Marine Corps and being an idiot. And she was just like, nope. I was like, okay. Want to have kids? She's like, oh, yeah. When? Oh, probably here in the next 18 months to 2 years. I'm like, got it. All right, cool. Are you married? She's like, nope. I have a fiance. Okay, another problem. All right. When you have kids, how many kids do you want to have? I'd like to have a big family. I want to have 4 or 5 kids. Cool. How long do you want to spend in the military? Probably another 3 years or so, and then I think I'll put in my resignation. I'm like, so listen, I don't want you to pop your bubble or anything. But first of all, when are you going into Buzz? She's like, I think I'm probably about 18 months from going in. I'm like, you just said that you want to have kids in 18 months. She's like, yeah, just right around after that. I'm like, do you even know what you're getting into with Buzz? First of all, 18 months from now, you're 34. You're looking at, depending on when your birthday is, you could be 36 years old. Your body is not going to behave the same as a 21-year-old dude. He has a hard enough time getting through. Now you're a female who's literally 35 years old, nearly 35, 36. You're going to be going through. I'm wondering what's going to happen with your menstrual cycle. She's like, I don't understand what you mean. I said, let me break it down for you. You're going to run nearly a half marathon a day. Some of the times you're in the water, you're going to be swimming somewhere between 2 and 7 miles in the water. 1,800 push-ups. That was before lunch.
No way.
So yeah.
Holy cow.
Day one. And I remember my swim buddy and I were counting. And then after lunch, we were just like, I'm not counting anymore. I just don't want to put up with that. And I don't think I can count high enough anyway. But then, but my thing is, you want to have children. I want that for you as well. Are you going to be able to do all of this and still be able to have kids? Are you still willing to pay that price? Because there are guys that I know that are. I always say, and I've heard it said, and I have repeated that the same thing that allows you the drive to get through buds is the same thing that's probably going to keep you from walking at 50. Mm-hmm. And as it stands, I don't have any cartilage left in my knees. I haven't ran in 2 or 3 years. That's why I fight now. That's why everything is about, just being capable in the way that I possibly can. What's your price tag going to be for going through? And are you willing to pay that? Because if that's what you're willing to pay, then do it, then get it. But if it's not, and the thing is that I think that when it comes down to women going in, if that's their thing and that's what they want to do, I am not politically opposed. I just don't have that part of that just doesn't exist. My thing is people. And are you able to do that and do it successfully? Because if somebody comes up to you and says, oh, that's your goal, that's your dream, here's the price tag. Are you willing to pay it? And if your answer is like, I cannot afford that at all, how do you know if you can afford it or not? But there are certain portions of a price tag where you can afford it. You pay this, you do this. Did you know that you are pretty much going to just you're going to be incapacitated within 3? Your quality of life is going to decrease. You want to have a family? Do you want to have a decreased quality of life while you have toddlers? Do you want that? Or maybe your inability to have kids. It's just so there's a bunch of question marks with that. And those are the questions that people need to answer before they go in, guy or girl. So that's where I'm at on it.
Okay. I think that's a pretty good non-opinionated but very factually based thing about counting the cost before, right. Again, another real spiritual, scriptural application. Jesus says, a man goes to build a tower, he counts the cost before he starts so that he doesn't run out of money halfway through and it's got a halfway done tower and everybody makes fun of him, right? You better know what you're doing before you start getting in. Because lots of people want to be called a Navy SEAL. Not many people want to do what it takes to get it.
Right. Yeah. It's not just at the bottom of a Cracker Jack box. There's a lot of bleeding that goes into that.
Well, you had me at 1,800 push-ups before lunch, baby. That's all the price tag you had to show me.
Right. It comes in handy though. You learn a lot of tricks and buds when it comes down to raising boys. Though, if you're raising boys, it's like, oh, really? That's a good idea. Wow, you just lost your privilege of hot water. For 2 days. Watch their attitudes change right away. I don't have to take cell phones away. I don't have to take away their iPad and TV. Hot water. After a couple of cold showers, they're like, check.
What worked well for my daughter was taking her door off the hinges.
Mm-hmm. I've done that too. Yeah, that's a fun one.
When you learn how to speak to your mom more respectfully, you get your door back.
Yep, you get your door back. The other one too is I'm right now trying to figure out how to reduce the amount of oxygen they get with every breath. Because if that can happen, then after a while, when you start walking around, you're just always like, you always feel like you've been underwater for 2 or 3 minutes.
Having raised 2 kids with bad asthma, I never had to worry about
Never had to worry about that. They did it themselves.
Yeah.
But
well,
just
you see these buzz guys out here right now. Are they the level of what you remember? You're seeing them out here, all the time.
They're
I'm putting you on the spot. I realize.
Yeah. No, these guys are, just like watching their brains work. Cause I go out there and I talk to them and I look them in the eye, see what they have behind see what's behind the glasses there, and get to know them a little bit, ask them where they're from. It's the same cross section of society that when I went through.
Is that right?
It's the exact same cross section. You got the farmers, you got the guy that came out of real estate, you got the guy that's went to an Ivy League school, and you got the one that just barely graduated high school, and you got the guy that got tired of corporate America and decided to go. I mean, it's a very clean cross section of society. They grew up different than I did, though.
Yeah, right.
I didn't have an Xbox. I didn't have a PlayStation.
You didn't have email.
I didn't have email.
You're old.
I didn't have a texter. I didn't have super fast thumbs like these guys have.
When you wanted to find someplace, you had to take out your Thomas guide and look it up on a map.
Yep.
And figure it out.
If you couldn't read a map you weren't going far.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember I came home from school once when I asked my mom, what's for dinner? She goes, I don't know. What are you bringing home? I was like, well, here's my cue. Grab my fishing pole, grab my worms, go back to the lake. I came back with 9, 10 fish. And she was like, I was kidding. I was like, well, but, and so she was like, dinner plans on hold. Now we're making fish. And we had branded fish. But I was so proud because but how many kids get to experience something like that? But that's what happens when you grow up out in the country doing country boy stuff. And it was a very interesting, different, I'm not saying some of these kids don't grow up that way. I'm just saying that the things that are available to them weren't available to me. However, some of the things that they have had to face, they face sooner than the things that I've had to face. Things come with having a cell phone at your disposal. There are things that I had to go down, and I wonder what was behind on that magazine on the wall in 7-Eleven, behind the thing that's in a wrapper, the magazine in a wrapper. I'm like, oh, hey. My mom's like, what are you looking at? Get over here.
Right.
I'm like, oh, nothing. Looking at the auto parts guide. I'll come over. I'm back. Now, in the privacy of their closet, their room, wherever they are, they can pull something up that could possibly have things that they can never unsee that could possibly ruin the way they view relationships for the rest of their lives. And having to battle that even with my boys. These guys are having to face that, and so it's like, it doesn't have anything to do with buds. No, I kind of got the topic a little bit, but I mean, these guys here they're going to do just fine, but also technology's changed too for war fighting. It's completely different than when I went through. They have much more information. There's drones, there's forward-looking things that they can see, satellite imagery. I remember the first time we had to send any kind of digital imagery. We were out there, we were humping around 35 pounds of gear. Now, a guy pulls his cell phone out, looks at his phone, and his sister from across the world sent him a picture of her cat. Yeah. It's like, oh, wow, look at that. See, my sister's cat. Before we had to carry 30 pounds of gear to even get anything close to that sent somewhere else for military purposes. So the technology is different. So, I mean, things have changed. I talked to some guys that fought in World War II. Were clearing the beaches of Normandy, and I got to have, I did a movie not long ago on them. It's called Navy SEALs or Untold Stories. I got tired of all the media, all the stuff that's going on with SEALs. I'm like, no one's ever telling the old guys' stories. Let's hear some of their stories. Mm-hmm. So me and my filmmaker partner, we went out, we raised, $800,000-$900,000, took us 3 years, and we interviewed all these guys, and the stories they told were fantastic. And I'm looking at that going, I don't know, man.
Where can someone find that documentary?
Navy SEALs or Untold Stories. Use your Google machine.
Okay.
See what comes up. It was on PBS. I haven't looked it up in a while. Maybe on it'll be on YouTube. You'll be able to find it on YouTube somewhere. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got to go to this little break, but when we come back, all the character you talked about that gets built in you, it had to all come out in one moment of testing for you to see, where are you with your faith? Where are you with your love of your neighbor? and how much suffering are you willing to put up with to save somebody else? And so, we get back to this break. I want to delve into that.
Today's episode is brought to you through the generosity of Waterstone. For nearly 40 years, Waterstone has assisted givers in supporting their favorite charities, like Promise Keepers, by crafting customized, innovative giving solutions. Waterstone gift strategists stand ready to create your personalized charitable plan, utilizing business interest, real estate, appreciated assets, charitable trusts, giving funds, and more. These donor-specific giving strategies allow givers to bypass capital gains taxes, receive a fair market value charitable deduction, and have tax-free growth for years to come. Prioritize income, minimize taxes, and optimize your giving with Waterstone. Find out how to give and receive the most from your assets by visiting www.waterstone.org.
Promise Keepers is back, and we're relaunching the stadium events that brought millions of men to Christ. Join us this July at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas, for a men's conference like no other. Strengthen your soul with unforgettable worship led by top Christian artists. Form friendships with brothers in Christ that last a lifetime, and discover new tools and strategies that will empower you to follow Jesus more faithfully. Be sure to get your tickets before they sell out, or find a simulcast location near you. Visit www.promisekeepersevent.com for the latest information. We'll see you this summer.
So we're talking to Jeff Bramstedt, Navy SEAL extraordinaire, but there's something about you and your life that makes me admire you way more than the whole SEAL thing. Because we all talk about Christian love, and sometimes you sort of wonder, if I was tested in a certain way, how would I come out? Right? That's one of the values of military, special forces, Marine Corps, or being a big athlete is, testing yourself, seeing how far can I go, as we talked about. But in the Christian walk, it's like, if I was going to be burned at the stake, would I recant? I was just reading a story about 38 priests in the Soviet Union that were dragged out and, gun put to their head and said, "Is there a God?" Yes, pull the trigger. And all 38 of those priests stood up and did not recant their faith. Would I be in that camp? And you really don't know till your moment of testing comes. You can say, "Oh, I'm the man, I could do it." You had a moment of testing come in a way that was just unbelievable. And so I'm just going to let you tell the story about what you did out of Christian love for someone that you never met.
Christian love. The hospital staff would differ with you on that.
F words don't necessarily rule Christian love.
We learned that I was the worst patient in history. My wife went to college with these 3 other girls, and to this day they're all super tight. One of them has a sister. Her name is Melinda, who was suffering from a disease called polycystic kidney disorder or disease. Basically, it cysts on the kidney, but for her, it had migrated to her liver. Her liver was about the size of a newborn. Usually, your liver is about 1,500 grams. It's about that big, right? Hers was the size of an infant, a newborn. Oh, and so what was happening was it was taking her. It was displacing all of her organs. Her kidneys were pressed against her spine. Her heart and lungs were impeded on, so her heart rate was high. She was having to breathe at the top part of her lungs. This really like frequent breaths, just because she couldn't get a full breath. Her diaphragm was affected. It was moving her intestines around. Stomach was moved. And she was so uncomfortable. She wasn't able to stay awake for much of the day because she was just always so tired and lethargic because she didn't have the movement of O2 and oxygen. And I don't know how it all works. I'm just trying to piece together what the doctors had told me about her and what she's told me. But she made a plea for her life on Facebook. And me not being a big social media guy, I don't even have social media. My wife, who had Facebook, found it. And I was over in Denmark at the time. I was over at the Skydiving World Championships in Copenhagen. And she sent me a portion of it through text message and said, "This is what I just found. This is Melinda. This is Michelle's sister. What do you think?" I read probably 4 lines. It basically was, if I don't get a donor, I will no longer be able to be the wife and mother that I've grown to love to be. And basically, she was saying, if I don't get a transplant, I'm going to die.
A transplant of
a liver transplant. Mm-hmm. And so I read probably the first 4 lines. Just replied to my wife. I'm like, cool, I'm in. Put my phone in my pocket. Went on with life. It was as easy as that. It wasn't a. Well, wait. Let me pray about it. Let me think about it. It was just see a need, meet it. If you need a miracle, which at the time I really didn't, but if you need a miracle, be a miracle. Watch what happens. When you're always looking out for somebody head on a swivel, I always tell my boys, character is the place inside you where the things that you say, the things that you do, and the decisions you make come from. And I made them memorize that.
Good. Say that again, because your airplane was just drowning you out.
That was a helicopter that I don't own, owned by Uncle Sugar.
Okay.
Yep. That's a U.S. government. It was it's why I take the kids to school. I have told them, I'm going to ask you every day, what is character? And then you have to say this back. So it's kind of like I'm going to write, this is the response, and you will memorize it. Do you understand me? And so, all right, boys, what's character? Character is a place inside of you where the things that you say, the things that you do, and the decisions you make come from. It's that God center. It's that heart thing. It has to come out of you, which means that to have that means that there has to be a healed heart for that to happen. And so my boys have that. And so I would ask them after school, well, how did we do today? And I laughed at a kid I shouldn't have laughed at. Like, well, tomorrow, we know what we got to do. We got to go fix that. Right? The big 3, the 3 biggest, most healing things you can say. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Will you forgive me? To that kid. And you're going to make a new friend in the process.
Good for you.
And so watching these kids do that, right? So to me, that was, I can't sit there and tell my kids, this is the character you have to have. This is what you need to do. This is how you want to live your life. If I'm going to be the guy that's going to be like, ooh, that looks like a bad problem, step over it and then carry on with my life. I see a need. I got to meet it. It just has to happen. There is no other option. So I said to my wife, I'm in. She was like, I'm in. No discussion or, hey, what do you think? Or what do you, I was like, no, I'm in. She's like, well, what about the role I get to play? And she's like, you know what? Never mind. I'm in first. And so she was back home. So she put her name in before I even got there, before I even got home. I didn't even know it. And so there's a questionnaire you have to fill out, and they ask you all these really interesting lifestyle questions that you can possibly imagine about drug use and your sex life and things like that. And so she got through that, and then she went to do her drug test, and they found that she had a marker in her blood that if she was on an operating table, her chances are 30-40% higher that she would bleed out on the table. Or is it? No, it's the opposite. Her blood clots too fast and could create moving obstacles around in her blood. So basically, she could aneurysm on an operating table. That's what it was. So she got kicked out. So I came home from Denmark, and she was like, so I tried before you and didn't make it through. And so now it just became this competitive thing. I'm like, I got this. Did the questionnaire, did the test, like, oh yeah, you're good. And I may or may not have actually said neener to my wife, and went from.
I get to get cut up, but not
I
you.
get to get the big scar, So then I went to Denver, Colorado, and that's where we did at UC Health. Met my doctor. Her name was Dr. Elizabeth Pomfret. She is amazing. And she just explained what's going to happen. And we're still in the phase of being able to figure this out. 3 or 4 trips to Colorado for more testing. The last one was the really deep, like they put you in the MRI machine. They look at everything. They put you on a treadmill and they say, we want you to make this the hardest workout you've ever done. I'm in jeans and no shirt. And my wife started reading a magazine. She's just like, I can't believe you said that out loud to the nurse. And I like point that thing straight up. And I'm just, does it have a 6-minute mile on it? I'm up there with wrecked knees, just tear this thing up. And she's like, he's going to break that treadmill. And in the process, he's going to need 2 double knee replacements. Like he's been going long enough. Put him on the table and get your information. And so like, okay. So I'm like sweat all over the place, lay on the table. And they said, all right, well, you're good to go. And that was the final.
So what was that moment like for you? Like when they say you're good to go and you realize that this competition you're trying to win, you suddenly won it. And your prize is you get to go through a horrific recovery.
I was excited because I had never had a surgery in my life. I wanted to see this firsthand. And so for me, it was an adventure.
I'm not sure it was love. I think you might just be insane.
It's a little crazy. But I remember the day that I met Melinda because it was that last day of testing, and my wife was not at the hospital with me in Denver, and I was in the room across the hall.
No, why was she not in the hospital with you?
She had to fly home for something. She's a scientist, and she has stuff that she has to do that's on timelines based on what she's doing for her projects. She's a chemical engineer. I was in the room with the social worker, and she's saying, "Look and listen, did anybody ever coerce you, pay you money? Is anybody blackmailing you to do this or whatever?" And I was like, lady, if you knew the life I led, there's plenty to blackmail. The thing is, I just talk about it in front of people all the time. So it's not really blackmail at this point. But no, nobody, I did this at my own will. Mm. Why did you do it? I'm like, because it's not okay that there's going to be a woman who's not going to be able to be. And then I thought about it. I said, it's not okay that there's a man that's going to lose his wife when there's nothing he can do about it. So I'm standing up in his stead for his wife. And she just kind of looked at me. She's like, I've never heard that response. And I had started answering another way, but then I switched because I remember thinking early on, what would it be like if I was in this position where my wife needed something and there's nothing I could do because maybe our blood types weren't the same, or maybe I had something that would get in the way of me having to be who I needed to be for her, and that would destroy me. That would change me as a human being. It would literally change me as a human. As a man, as a father, it would change, and it would be a lot of work to come back from that.
To watch her die and know that somebody somewhere could have done something
right.
that nobody would.
Or that I couldn't.
Yeah. So you feel like a failure as a man.
Yes. And so I was like, that to me is enough. Mm. And she was like, she was like, wait here for a minute. She went out in the hallway. She went out in the hallway and shut the door. She came back about 10 minutes later, and she was like, listen, the lady who is going to be having your liver, she's across the hallway in the room, and she wants to meet you. How do you feel about that? And I was like, absolutely not.
Really?
And she was like, wait, what? You just got done giving me this big answer that was, in my opinion, fairly noble. And then you're saying, no, you don't want to meet her? I'm like, no, we'll have plenty of time. I'm sure in the hospital when we're recovering. But how long is she awake per day? Probably 3-4 hours. Cool. How many kids does she have? She has 3. What are their ages? They're 17 and 9 and 7. And her husband works and everything else? Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this woman who's awake 3 hours a day. And we're going to, and she's probably been awake for probably half of that, more than that right now. And we're going to put her on the spot, and we're going to put her in front of a complete stranger who's giving her a portion of his liver. And we're going to have her right now on the spot come up with some crafty way where she feels like she's going to have to say thank you. We're going to do that now. We're going to do that to her. Wow.
That was really empathetic.
And she was like, well, once again, I'll be right back. This time she was gone for like 10 seconds. She came back and she was like, let's go. Like the option had been removed. So I'm like, fine. I walk out in the hallway. It was like every doctor in Colorado, I think, was in the hallway. I mean, every doctor in the United States. How much more hyperbolic can I get with this?
Did that freak you out when you realized the seriousness?
I was like looking up down the hallway. I'm like, did I miss something? Like, what happened? And then everybody's crying. Like, this is so wonderful. I'm like, what is going on? Like, we just love when they meet for the first time. I'm like I didn't swipe right for this. This wasn't like some Tinder thing. This was like, I don't even understand what's door. She's in here. Cool. I went in there, and when Did you ever see like when a little girl has a Barbie doll and she shakes it? What the hair does, blonde hair, it's like all over the place. That's what it looked like. This woman came flying across the room at me, this little blonde girl. She jumped like 3 or 4 feet in front of me and latched onto me, arms and legs. She was like wrapped around. And I'm like, and then her husband walked up behind her. And he's this really buff, good looking guy, you know, and then he starts talking. He's got a Kiwi accent. I'm like, oh, seriously? And an accent? Wow. I was like, nice to meet you, man. I know it's uncomfortable. I'm kind of wearing your wife. And he was crying. And after I got her kind of, had to, create some space, get her off me. And she was just bawling. It was just this moment. And we were talking. There was just one of our doctors were in there, and oddly enough, they're a married couple too. The doctors, the woman who took the liver out of me gave my liver to her husband, who put it in Melinda.
Dude, that's just crazy.
Yeah, and they met in high school. They didn't even meet at liver doctor school. They're these amazing people, and we stayed in touch with them as well. My wife and I, and James and Melinda. But I said, Melinda, I'm not doing this for you so much, no offense. I'm just doing it for him, because I can't imagine what it would feel like if your wife is in this situation. There's nothing you can do about it. And that was a really strong moment between James and I. And ever since then, he's been one of my best friends on this planet.
Really?
And we've stayed super tight. And even Melinda and I, but their kids are just like I feel like they're my kids. We have this thing that's going on now. So I literally call her my little sister. And because we actually share, to some degree, some bit of DNA, because she has a portion of my liver, and the liver does grow back, so she has a full liver. I have a full liver. It's just that now she just every once in a while might crave a beer here and there. She might have to have a remote in her hand, and every once in a while need to hear gunfire, I mean, she's just probably, I have these cravings that she didn't have before. Really, really, really like bacon. I don't know. Maybe she didn't before. But our friendship and our family dynamic between the two, has become very, very close. Just like we were born into the same family, and through the recovery process and everything else, just staying in touch and staying able to. For a week there, I was able just to walk across the hall and just go see her in the hospital, because they put us right across the hall from each other.
How much of your liver did they take?
They took 30% of my liver. Normally they take 40%, but she was super tiny. And so she didn't need, and my liver, the doctor said, your liver is freakishly large. I was like, you know what they say? Big hands, big liver, So they took just a portion of it, and a little bit, they took another little slice that they use for some medical testing. Every time they have somebody who does this voluntarily, they want to know if they're always trying to find if there's some kind of commonality between all the people. Is there something in their makeup? One thing that they found has nothing to do with the liver. That's just for science. But they're all fire, law enforcement, military.
Is that right?
They said 90% of them, that's what they are.
Wow.
When they do the altruistic version of
the people who agree to be
donating.
Mm-hmm. When we talked about this before, you told me the recovery was not fun.
Not fun.
How long did it take you to
90 days of not picking up anything over 10 pounds. But for the first probably 2 weeks, you're sleeping constantly. You crave eggs and steak. Protein, high protein stuff, because your body's regenerating something that takes a lot of protein to regenerate.
Wow.
And I remember the one thing I asked the doctor, I'm like, I want a gnarly scar. I mean, I want it like I want it to be gaping, massive. I want to be able to test my wit to be able to come up with a different story every time I'm asked about what that looks like. Now,
did you have to be careful of the drugs they gave you, because your liver is what processes drugs, right? Mm-hmm. So, did they have to be careful about that? And also, I'm asking two questions at one time here, but do you have any long-term effects after that? do you have to not drink alcohol? Do you have to be careful about taking ibuprofen? I mean, is there any?
No long-term effects. They weren't super careful about that stuff because I was fairly prehabbed. I think I was a healthy individual with no pre-existing conditions. I had never even been in that situation before. And so that your anesthesia was their Mark I motto that they normally do. The anesthesiologist that was there, we called her the White Walker because she was just, she was a White Walker. Game of Thrones reference. She had white hair and these piercing blue eyes, and she was terrifying. All 4 feet of her. She was just like, she's like, listen to my voice. Can you hear me? I was like, yes, ma'am. Like she was kind of creeping me out a little bit. She said, I am a woman. I am small and I am old. None of these things describe you. So when you wake up, if I even think that you feel like you're in a fight because you wake up, you have no idea where you are. You start wanting to, yeah, I got the biggest needle in the room. I will put you back down, boy. You understand? I was like, yes, ma'am. But I didn't. When I woke up, first thing I asked was, is Melinda okay? They're like, nope, she's fine. She's just fine. Of course, she still had another hour and a half of surgery, so he lied to me, but then I went back to sleep. But man, the doctor staff was amazing. Dr.
So you're fine. I mean, you're rolling. You're back to jiu-jitsu.
I was back. I was on the 91st day. I was back on the mats.
Wow, man.
Yep.
And she's fine.
She's fine. She's great. She has to take some medications the rest of her life, just anti-rejection medications, and those I think give her a little bit of a hit on her immune system. So she got COVID. So she called me. She's like, James has COVID, and I was like, cool. You won't get it. She's like, why not? Why won't I get it? I'm like, COVID's now afraid of you. You got my and she called me back about 5 days later. She's like, okay, so now I have COVID. Now what? And I was just like, you don't have any symptoms. She's like, I'm done listening to you. And she didn't. She was down for a couple of days, and she was right back up, and she was doing just fine. And so it didn't really affect her. Fortunately, it didn't affect her a whole lot. So
how did this change the dynamic, if it did at all, with you and your wife and your walk with the Lord? The
liver
thing,
the
sacrifice.
I could not have done that without her. The reason why it was at the ready, the answer, yes, let's do this, was because I knew that she was going to have my back 100%. Not everybody can do this, and I mean that from a financial standpoint. You have to be independent of a paycheck that happens, and you have to be there for the paycheck because you are going to be missing from work for a couple months. You have to have a family member that's going to be able to be there and take care of you and put up with you when you're in a little bit drugged out state. And some of it takes a while for things to start working again and to put up with all of that. Your entire body to start working normally. And my wife was a trooper through that entire thing. She set everything up, and I did my best I could before. Set up things on auto pay, make sure all that stuff is being done on its own. So then there's somebody there, like the kids are good because they couldn't be there with us either. How are we going to set that up? So it took some logistical planning, but she was right there every step of the way. She was right beside me. She was right there in front of me. She was right behind me. She was everywhere. She was all over making sure that I was good. I am the worst patient. I'm the guy that's going to be like, I'm good. Let's, there's some weights around. Yeah, I got to pick up some heavy stuff. She's like, as long as it's under 10 pounds. I was like, yeah, those colored ones over there, they look like keychains. I'm not picking those up. I'll wait, And so I just ended up being the person that needed the ultimate of babysitting. And she was so good with that and so patient with me because I am not the best patient ever. I'll take care of somebody else, but it comes down to taking care of myself in those situations. I'm not very good at it. So, but she was fantastic. With my relationship with my wife, literally doubled, tripled, quadrupled, if it could. I'm being hyperbolic again, but it let us know that even in the toughest stuff, the questions that need to be answered that are going to have long-term effects, the answer is long-term effect. when the answer is the way it is, and she knows that it's the way that God would have us go, she has zero qualms with it. She's just like, it's an adventure. Let's do this. Send it. And that's Robin. That's just how she's wired. So it was amazing.
Dude, you are a stud, man. Thanks for being on here.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to On the Edge podcast with Ken Harrison. For a lot of you, this is our first time meeting, and I want to tell the men listening about an organization I'm the current chairman of, Promise Keepers. Promise Keepers is an organization founded by Coach Bill McCartney that's led men across the world to a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. Promise Keepers is calling men back to courageous and bold servant leadership. To learn more and get involved in the mission of Promise Keepers, visit promisekeepers.org. Follow on social media or download the Promise Keepers app on Apple Store or Google Play by searching Promise Keepers. Through the Promise Keepers app, you'll receive access to devotionals, Bible studies, and other great articles and video content, and a community to build friendships, lead your family, and become transformative leaders. See you next time for On the Edge with Ken Harrison.